Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves. I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, David Wyatt-Hupton. David, how are you doing today?
Doing good. It's almost Friday. Football tonight. Won't watch it live because I'm not as lucky as you to have a nighttime job, which allows me to watch NFL games live.
Well, I'm not working tonight, actually.
Are you not?
No, so I've got I'm not going to be able to.
You're gonna have to watch it like the rest of us.
Yes, just catch up in some way or another. Yeah, so it should be. I think that's a decent Thursday night game.
Cowboys, isn't it?
Cowboys
Saints.
and Saints. Yeah, so a lot of fantasy options there. If anyone's in playing that, you'll be able to just wake up to
CD Lamb. That's what I need. CD Lamb needs to come back big time. So does Dalton Schultz. They've let me down recently.
I think everyone's got something to wake up and see how their score looks after that game. So, but yeah, we're almost into week 13. Couldn't believe it already. It's crazy how fast it's gone already. Coming off that win, our third win of the season against the Texans, and then heading into a game at home to the Philadelphia Eagles, who should provide a very interesting matchup for us to see if we've learned anything against some of maybe similar opponents who are very good at running the ball, and this team is the best in the league at running the ball. So they're going to provide a very big challenge for our run D. How are you feeling about it generally going into this week, and the way the team is kind of going into this week?
It's always better to come into this week on the back of a win than a loss. So instantly, I'm already feeling a little bit more confident about it. I mean, I'm really hoping that the Eagles have PTSD at Meadowlands because they obviously were in New Jersey last week, lost to the Giants in pretty spectacular fashion. I mean, I think they outgained them in pretty much every statistical category, but they turned the ball over 4 times, and that's what you can't do at any level, but especially in the NFL. So, stopping the run is going to be hard. It makes me nervous because of what we've seen so far. I think the Jets' rushing defense is ranked 27th in the league, so there are issues there. But I'm feeling more confident. Yeah, I'm hoping. I want a good game from Zach.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's if we have a really good game from Zach, it doesn't have to be a 300-yarder, but like a 200-yard performance, a couple of touchdowns, and if we lose, we lose. But it'll show signs, and that's kind of what I'm looking for this week.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be, the main focus for the rest of the season is his development, and it's a team sport, and I really hate focusing on one player. But when it's the quarterback and he's the second overall pick and he's basically the future of your franchise, you kind of have to focus on him.
Yeah.
So, feeling relatively confident, but I don't know if it's a good thing that the Eagles lost to the Giants or if it's a bad thing.
I took it as a bad thing. Generally, I thought I would have been more happy if Rager had caught that last catch at the end and they got the win, and they didn't play well, got the win, and kind of walked into our game thinking it was just going to be, an easier game and another win on their way to the playoffs. And I think now they're kind of going to be determined to make sure they don't get embarrassed again. So I think we still, even in that being said, I think that if we play our game and play well and do a better job, I think we'll get into all the specifics later on in terms of defensively and offensively what we need to do. But I think if we play a decent game, we can give them a decent game and be in with a shot. But it all comes down to Zach. It really does. If he has a good game, I think we're going to feel a lot better about the game, no matter what the result is. So, yeah, I mean, we're playing in our stealth black, which we're 3-0 in our history of playing in that kit. So let it continue. Hopefully, Zach does as well as Mike White did in the stealth black. So. Let's see.
So we're 3-0 in the stealth black, and we're 0-11 against the Eagles. So something's got to give.
Yeah, exactly. There you are. There's a statistical nugget there. So, So on today's show, we'll be talking about the game, previewing it later on. In a little while, we'll be speaking with. We'll be heading over to my interview with Liam from Next Man Up podcast, which is the Eagles UK-based podcast, to kind of talk about his team and how they are kind of coming off last week's defeat. But yeah, just in terms of the news this week, there's nothing really much to talk about except a few transactions here or there, little people coming in and out of the team. Obviously, Keelan Cole is out with COVID, and Denzel Mims is coming back from COVID, and he's also was able to condition last week as well, so he's ready to play this week, which is good. Gives Mims another chance. You think, how are you feeling about this for Denzel to have give another shot at some decent playtime?
Yeah, I mean, we're all quite big Denzel fans for one reason or another. I thought he did have a rough end of the stick at the start of the season for whatever reason. He managed to play himself back into contention. The coaches were getting positive on him, and then obviously he got COVID. So, it's been a hectic season. It's been an up and down season for Denzel, but without Keelan there, I'm hopeful that he can regain those snaps that he was starting to get.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't doing anything spectacular. He never had that breakout game. He still hasn't scored a touchdown, but he just started to look a little bit more comfortable. It just gives the defense another issue just because of his size and his speed combination. They have to always account for where he is. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he lines up, how many snaps he gets on Sunday, and how good he looks, and if him and Zach have any kind of connection. So I'm happy to have Denzel back. Obviously Dan Brown's back. So
yeah,
I
mean Dan Brown's back. Obviously we traded him to get the LDT from the Chiefs, and then they released Dan Brown anyway. We got him back, so we got LDT for free effectively. I know a lot of the Chiefs fans are saying basically it was a salary dump eventually. But I mean, it's like, I think it's, I don't think there's a lot there, but when you look at our salary, we're like, yeah, we'll pick up that. It's nothing, but actually they're in such dire straits with their cap that actually it makes a bit of a difference for them. So I guess it works out for the teams. But yeah, picking up LDT and then bringing Dan Brown in now with Wesco out for a few weeks. Makes sense, I guess, because the guy knows the system. Even as much as we don't like Dan Brown as much of a player, he knows the scheme, he knows the assignments, he knows everything. So it kind of makes sense to have a guy who knows all that as a backup guy who can come in now that we're without Wesco. So yeah, it is what it is. We have to massively upgrade the tight end room. We know that in the off season, and obviously we'll get into all that once the season's wrapped up. But yeah, it is what that is our tight end room for now. So that's what we have to deal with. So I'm not celebrating his return, but it's a nice little nifty thing that we got a pretty decent guard for free, effectively, in terms of trade value. So yeah, there's not really much else to discuss. I think we're looking for a bounce back game from Zach, and I think it's just going to be, we'll see how we go into this game. I think what we'll do is we'll head over to our interview with Liam, and then we'll be back to discuss the preview ourselves. So yeah, we'll head over to our interview with Liam now. Okay, so we're joined by Liam from British Eagles, and he also runs the podcast, the Eagles UK-based podcast, Next Man Up. Liam, thanks for joining us on the pod.
Hey, listen, thanks, Andres, for having me. Looking forward to talking some Birds and talking some Jets, and getting into the game coming this weekend, this Sunday. Thanks for having me.
No, it's really, really good. So, yeah, we're going to get into all the kind of the overall season kind of viewpoint and this game, this Sunday's game. But before we kick it off, how did you become an Eagles fan, and when was that?
Well, the reason I became an Eagles fan is sat about 10 feet from me, and that's my fiancée, Katie Lamb. So I met her about 8-9 years ago. I'd always had an affiliation for the NFL. And when I met her, she had an uncle who lived in Philadelphia. So when we went on our first holiday to the US, about a year after we met each other, we went, of course, to Philly. Bit of a trip to New York as well. So there was maybe a slight chance there could have been a Jets fan, but to be honest with you, it was signed, sealed, delivered. Her uncle's lived there for 30 years. I went to the Lincoln Financial Field to watch my first NFL game live in the US, and it's been an addiction ever since. It's I love the sport. I'm a huge soccer fan in the UK, and I was cricket fan, and it's my whole life. And now NFL has just blown it all out of the water. As you said, we host the Next Man Up Eagles podcast. We also present the British and Irish Eagles on Twitter with myself, Mick, Anthony, and Phil, and we love it. We podcast every week like you guys do. We love connecting with the fan base here in the UK. We love growing the sport, and I've probably seen about 3 or 4 Eagles games live now, which is nice. I'm looking forward to my next one.
That's really cool. That's really, really good. I mean, this is like us. This is a kind of a fresh year for you guys with Nick Sirianni, bringing him in. Obviously, I know you interviewed Coach Salah before he took the job with the Jets, so it was all a bit of a whirlwind in terms of but two franchises restarting a bit after some probably negative endings to the previous eras with the Wentz era and the Peterson era, us with Gase. How has it been, that transition for Sirianni first year, and obviously with Jalen Hurts now kind of being thrust into that starting role permanently? How's it been from the off season, the kind of feelings about the off season, and how the season's played out so far?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is you got to remember we're Eagles fans. We got a reputation for not being very nice and not being very patient with our coaches and our players, and the owner of the franchise. So I think for me and some of the guys in the UK, it's probably been slightly different to some of the people on the ground in Philadelphia, because they don't pull any punches over there at all. um, but I think overarchingly, it's been, if we look back, as you say, to the turbulent time we had at the end of last season with Wentz and Doug Peterson, and Howie, all at odds, three-headed snake, all fighting each other instead of what they should have been looking at on the field.
Yeah.
I think it's an improvement now where we are, because there isn't fighting amongst the head coach, the quarterback, and the owner. Now there is a question that could be posed, which is, well, has the owner just got himself a coach who is a yes man and will do as he says, and so forth? And there's many people who think that is the case. Howie and Lurie run the show at the Philadelphia Eagles. There is no denying that. They have a huge say in who we draft. We have a huge say in who the roster is, and some say have a huge say in who plays on Sunday, Monday, or Thursday. So I think it's calmer in the sense that there's less animosity going on. There's less in-house fighting. In terms of the talent of the squad, I think we're in a better position than we were last year. I think there are a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of rookies, Andres. Yeah. There's a lot of rookies. We got a rookie head coach.
Yeah, we're a young team as well with a rookie head coach.
Yeah, of course you are.
We're in the same boat. I think we're two of the younger teams, and obviously there's young position coaches below that rookie head coach as well. So we're in the same position, and you get that inconsistencies, which obviously leads to performances like last week against the Giants, where, by all intent, but you should be able to beat the Giants, and it was, and even watching the game, you should have beaten them, and you didn't manage to, just because these things happen when you're a young team. So, it's one of those years. I think it's the first year of a new start, and you just got to rebuild. And I think it's the only difference with where you're coming from is you've had that recent success, and you're kind of rebuilding again to try and rebuild back up to success, while we're rebuilding on top of a failed rebuild, on top of a failed rebuild, on top of a failed rebuild. It's kind of that. So I think that's the only difference between where we are in terms of the Jets fan base, and my listeners know that it's very, very short-tempered right now, more than any other era in terms of with Salah and with Zach. It's a lot more tempered. So I think with you guys, there's a lot of question marks, but I think there is that context that still, even though with Philly fans they can be difficult. That's their reputation, but there is that recent success that you can pin and say, okay, let's try and build back up to that. And
absolutely, I mean, if you look at, I would say our fan bases right in this moment are probably the same kind of short-tempered mode, but I think your fan base has more of a reason to be than the Eagles fan base probably does. And I think the Eagles fan base are, in general terms, not fair with the situation, and probably want and expect too much. And if you look at the recent success, as you mentioned, it wasn't that long ago we won a Super Bowl. I was there watching us beat the Giants at the Lincoln Financial Field when Jake Elliott kicked a 61-yard field goal to break the Eagles' record of 1 second on the clock. That set us off to go and win a run to win the Super Bowl that year. And anyone who beats Tom Brady in the Super Bowl final, you like to see that, right?
Absolutely.
And I think because of that success, it's now expected within Philadelphia. More so, and we are in a transitional year. You hit the nail on the head there a second ago.
Yeah.
Nick Sirianni is a rookie coach. Devontae Smith, while he is the stud, is a rookie wide receiver 1. Jalen Reagor and Quez Watkins are wide receiver 2 and 3. Haven't done anything, and they're very, very young. Dallas Goedert, it's his first year as a tight end 1. Gannon as defensive coordinator, it's his first job as a defensive coordinator in the league. Yeah. You're looking at Shane Steichen, who's young as well. Apart from our offensive line coach, who's an absolute dog, I might add, everyone is young in the organization, and Jalen Hurts is one of those guys. And unfortunately, the Eagles, both from a fan base perspective and from an ownership perspective, want a throwing quarterback. And Jalen Hurts is he's a dual threat quarterback, and he's not a pocket passer. So a lot of the animosity at the moment is around Jalen Hurts. And I think unfair when you look at the stats. Just before I put it back to you, his stats for the amount of games he's played so far are on par, if not better, than Lamar Jackson's were at the same period in his career.
Yeah.
And we didn't see Lamar Jackson getting all of the pain and hurts that Jalen Hurts is getting. So it's an interesting time. We need a bounce back win against the Jets, but you guys also need a win. And I'm intrigued to chat to you about your Jets as well.
Yeah, I mean we're coming off that win, and we'd like to stack back-to-back wins for the first time in what seems like a long time, when we actually wanted those wins, because the only time we did it was those 2 wins last year when we actually wanted to tank. So from when, if you go back, it's a long time. It feels like since we got back-to-back wins, it was the year before. So it'd be nice to stack a few wins, and especially for Zach to bounce back from a pretty poor performance generally. He was definitely carried by the team, which is what you have to do with a rookie QB sometimes, and they got the win. But again, when you look at that Houston team, it's not to just about beat them. It's like that's not. That's why there's a lot of more negativity from that win, because Houston just are really terrible.
They're a bad franchise at the moment. You want to be beaten.
They're just really, really poor. So you kind of when you just about beat them, you don't feel you feel a bit icky, But in terms of this game, I think that I see a path for both teams to win, and it's all going to come down to your offense, our defense, and how well we can cope with it. We've struggled with it generally. It's improving our run D over time, over the last few weeks, but still not great. And you guys are very good at it. How you feel about that matchup in terms of the kind of the running game and with your offensive line kind of getting to that second level and making holes for your running backs to get through the defense of the opponent?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And just before I jump into that, like you guys are playing at either the best time or the worst time. Because we're coming off a dreadful game against the Giants, and it was we chatted yesterday, Andres. I think you caught the back end of our podcast where you were hearing us talk about all the bad things that happened, and there was a lot of them. So one or two things is going to happen on that front. Either we're going to bounce back and we're going to really show up on Sunday, or two, the confidence is drained and sapped, and we're going to see some of the same mistakes. But just bouncing it back to your question, which was the run offense of the Eagles against your run defense. We are number 1 in the league rushing the ball, which is bonkers considering we didn't rush the ball for the first 3 or 4 games of the season, barely at all. So Sirianni's completely switched that. However, it's an interesting time for us to come up against you because there's a lot of inconsistencies going on in terms of personnel at the moment, especially this week. Jason Kelce went out of the game injured. He's our stalwart center. Yeah, has great. Been for years. I don't think he's missed a starting game as an Eagle in his entire career. It's bonkers. He's as tough as nails.
He didn't practice on Thursday, did he?
No, and I think he'll play because it's Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce will go out there if his leg is hanging off his hip, right? He'll get out there, but he might not be 100%.
Yeah.
Driscoll left as well last week, and Herbert came in and played okay. So I'm not the offensive line isn't as consistent this week coming as it has been over the last few weeks, health wise and maybe starting wise. And our running backs are similar. So Jordan Howard is still injured. I don't think he'll play this weekend against the Jets.
Yeah.
Boston Scott is okay out of the backfield, but he's not spectacular. Kenneth Gainwell, who we signed in the 4th round of the draft this year, is he's really good, but he's averaging 3.6 yards per carry this year. He's good catching the ball out of the backfield, and ever since Howard and Boston Scott came in when Sanders was injured, it was almost like Sanders and Gainwell were the pair and Boston Scott and Howard were the pair, and now it's all up in the air. Sanders himself is coming off an ankle injury. He came and he played last week against the Giants, but then he was out for a few snaps and then came back in again. So while the offensive line has been brilliant, and while the running game has been very, very good, notwithstanding Jalen Hurts averaging over 60 yards rushing per game now, I don't know how healthy and how consistent they're going to front up this week as they have done over the last few weeks. You would think still we'll have enough on the ground, But also, I mentioned to you yesterday, Andres, Jalen Hurts is carrying an injury. He's only really confirmed today that he's going to play. And again, that's a leg injury. So he's not going to be running as much. And that's going to be a real test for Jalen Hurts, throwing the ball in the pocket. So you could see a lot of handoffs to running backs and a lot of pocket passing, maybe less of a risk with Jalen on the ground on Sunday, which can only help your Jets.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think if he's less mobile, that can only be a plus point, because obviously it's part of his game. It is part of his game as a pocket passer. He's obviously he's not as accomplished as a complete athlete. That makes the total.
He has 8 rushing touchdowns this year. Not many running back ones have that.
No. I think he's going to change the landscape of the game, even with him playing. It will change a lot if he's not be able to move around, then he's kind of more less mobile. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, and I really feel that's where it's going to pin down. I think because that's really, I think obviously on the other side of the ball, obviously our offense with Zach running it is going to be a bounce back. I think a bounce back is needed from his in terms of performance. It doesn't have to be some sort of 300-yard game and multi-touchdown, but he just needs to kind of do the simple things right and see where we go. Because I think there is, how would you say, the defense? Your defense is doing okay, but it's still they're still beatable in parts. Would you say?
Yeah, I think the defense has kept us in a lot of games this year, which we could have been blown out in. The Giants game is one of them. I can't believe we kept them to 13, 14 points. Because we gave him so many opportunities. We turned the ball over 4 times.
Yeah.
3 interceptions from Jalen Hurts. I had a discussion with Mick, my co-host on the podcast yesterday. He said defense was one of the good elements of the game. And I said they were solid, but, they didn't blow me away. I think the defense were better in the first half of the year, first half of the first half of the year. I think teams have gotten to realize Javon Hargrave is being double teamed now. Pretty much every game up to center. He had 6 sacks in his first 5-6 games, and he's only had 1 sack since then, which was ironically against the Giants, which just happened. But it wasn't really a sack. He just ran to touch the quarterback down as he was kind of sliding. Yeah. Fletcher Cox, while he is amazing up front, he's only got 1 sack on the year and only 4 tackles for a loss, because he normally is double teamed. And I suppose the big part of our defense this year has been our cornerbacks, which historically has been a very weak part of the Eagles' play. But Darius Slay he's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. He's got three scores on defense. So he forced fumbles, recovered fumbles,
and pick 6. Yeah.
Pick 6. Bring it to the house, and he is what we thought he would be coming from the Lions last year. He had an okay season, but he got blown out by Metcalf and Adams for like 150 plus yards. And the Eagles fan base are like, okay, well, you're not big play Slay, are you? I don't think he had an interception, maybe 1. So defense, I think you probably hit the nail on the head. The defense is good, if not spectacular. I'll be interested to see what some of our defensive ends do at the weekend, and maybe some of the guys you may not have heard of or know too much about, because I think they may come into play come Sunday.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of, it goes to my next interesting question: is who are some of the players, or who's a specific player that you think will make a difference that maybe the general fan or the Jets fan wouldn't have known about?
Yeah, well, we didn't practice that, but what a layup, eh? So Josh Sweat, I think I don't know if you guys will know about him too much, but basically he came in and did okay for us last year as a kind of a backup defensive end. A lot of commentators and beat writers in the preamble coming up to the training camp and during training camp, Josh Sweat annihilated everyone in training camp. Like, his wingspan is ridiculous. I think he could probably hold a 747 plane if he wanted to.
Right, yeah.
And they were predicting 10 plus sacks for him this season, and it just, for whatever reason, hasn't quite happened. He's just missed, or he's just been pushed off, or they've got lucky and they've recovered the ball. And I feel like with Brandon Graham out, and he's been out for the year so far. Derek Barnett, one of our other defensive ends, has one of the worst disciplinary records in the league when it comes to tackling, and he's infuriating. And I think this game on Sunday might be where Josh Sweat finally steps up, and I could see him getting to the quarterback a couple of times,
right? Yeah.
And maybe forcing a fumble. And another player to look out for on defense is a guy called Alex Singleton.
Okay.
Alex Singleton is one of our linebackers. We're terrible at linebacker. I don't think we've drafted a linebacker higher than the third round in 197 years. Howie doesn't seem to like them. Singleton again was a player who came in last year and really impressed.
Yeah.
A couple of our year one, year two linebackers have stepped up this year and kind of took him out of the picture. But he still has over 100 tackles this year. He leads the Eagles in tackles, even though he's not been a starting linebacker.
Right.
And he's been played a little bit out of position in his linebacker role. And he came in for one of the injured linebackers last weekend and had a very, very good game. And I would look out for Singleton and Josh Sweat to make some plays against the Jets outside of your usual Hargrave,
Cox. Slay.
and Cox
And Slay, yeah.
And Slay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting that dynamic is very. I think it's going to be, if the Jets get a good performance from Zach, they've got a lot of weapons actually there that actually could make a difference. I know that could be quite an interesting matchup with some of the people you listed, whether they're bigger names or smaller names coming into the game.
I tell you who won't do anything, and that's Jalen Reagor.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think a lot of us know him. Obviously, through fantasy, you're thinking he's a name to look out for when he's drafted in the first round, especially ahead of Justin Jefferson, as we talked about yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to you guys, and I'll say it for my listeners. I said to you guys yesterday, if Joe Douglas is still in the room, you guys are going for Jefferson rather than Reagor. I don't know. I just thought that. Because Joe Douglas has got a pension. He's got a pension for big school, like for those bigger school players as well. And I think he would have gone for the LSU product over the TCU. Is TCU, was it? Did he went from?
I'm not big on my college football. That's Mick. You want to speak to Mick
Yeah,
about that?
I'm just trying to remember where Reagor's from. But anyway, David, my co-host, will remember as well. So we're both missing the two college guys on this side of the conversation. Yeah. But I think so. That's just an interesting dynamic that you kind of you let Jefferson slip past and went for Reagor. But we'll see. He'll probably score the win touchdown this year. You'll be forgiven by Eagles Nation after last week, because that was a really poor play on that fourth down where he needs to get that on. He needs to get that either down on the first for a touchdown or at least for a first down, and then you're rushing up to try and get it in. So it was just one of those really infuriating games that you think the whole game rested on his shoulders or on his hands, and they failed. So it is what it is. In terms of this game, in terms of what might happen, touchdowns, yardage. If there's a prediction you want to throw out there, that might happen during the game.
Yeah, Quez Watkins, mentioned him earlier on. He was a fifth or sixth round pick out of the Eagles last year. He's an absolute speed demon. I think he might have hurled in a couple of catches when we played you in practice in the preseason. I feel like even though Sirianni, we just talked about Reagor, even though Sirianni has come out to say that, Reagor will still be targeted, he actually came out to say, interestingly, that Reagor wasn't the design play call for both of those plays. It was someone else, but that's just who Hurts eventually went to.
Right.
We could talk about the route running and decision making another time for sure. Quez Watkins had a bright start to the year, and I think with Zach Ertz still being around, Dallas Goedert still being there, Jalen Reagor still being a wide receiver one pick, a first round wide receiver pick, and then obviously Devontae Smith, the coolest man in the entire planet, playing for us as well. Obviously, I'm biased. He's kind of taken a back step a little bit. I think that trust is gone now from Reagor's perspective, and I can see Watkins going for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. We're talking Deshaun Jackson-like plays here. I wouldn't be surprised if he does that in three or four plays. Right. Over 100 yards and two receiving touchdowns.
Would you classify this one as like a slightly out of the box one?
I would say this is out of the box. So he's not received for over 100 yards this year, and he's not had 2 touchdowns this year. So this will be something that's never happened before for Watkins. But I just have a feeling it's his time. And do you know what? One of them, they might not even be deep balls. One of them could be a screen pass. Like he is electric. I think through the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, him and Tyreek Hill were number 1 and 2 in terms of speed on the ground. Wide receiver.
Recorded speed, yeah.
Yeah, he is. This guy is rapid. And last year he was a bit weaker and couldn't contest catches. He built himself up a little bit in the offseason. He's a bit stronger, a bit bulkier, and he is He's Usain Bolt speed, this guy.
Wow. Okay, well, something to look out for across the field from Devonta Smith, who I think we're all aware of. In terms of the score prediction for this game, are you thinking maybe going? What are you thinking about Sunday?
Yeah, so I think the Eagles will win.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be a blowout performance. I think the Jets are coming off a win. I'd be confident. We're going to be annoyed that we lost the game against the Giants, and we're going to want to bounce back. But I don't think everything is going to hit on all cylinders for everything we've talked about this game. I think I had a little prediction on the podcast yesterday for next man up, and I went for 21-10 to the Eagles.
Yeah.
I'm not sticking with it.
Okay.
I've had a day to think about it, and I've had this conversation with you. I think it'll be closer than that. I think it'll be something like 23-17 to the Eagles, and I think the Eagles could be winning that on the last drive as well.
Fair enough. All right. Well, you've heard it here. That's the prediction. It's actually quite similar to the one I did on your podcast yesterday. So I think we're pretty much it's going to be, I think it's a touchdown game, one way or the other. And you're going with the Eagles, which is completely understandable, but also predictable as well. So, Liam, thank you for joining me on the podcast. If there is anyone that wants to follow you guys, I know you may want people like to follow other people in the UK that follow, other chapters, other teams. Where can people find you, your podcast, and the stuff that you do?
Yeah, so we're at British Eagles on Twitter for the overarching Eagles fan base, and we're at Next Man Up _ on Twitter for the Eagles podcast. And just for Jets fans out there, if you're listening in and you're in London this coming Sunday, myself and Anthony are going to be hosting a watch along at Passyunk Avenue in London. Andres, don't know if you can make it up from Reading, but we're hosting a watch along. We're going to have a few people there. We're going to eat some Philly cheesesteak, have some wings, and watch the game. So, if you're out there, give me a holler on Twitter, and maybe I'll see you there for a beer.
Definitely, there might be a fun atmosphere to have the two fan bases meet up. I know that Jets UK are a passionate fan base that we met up obviously this year in London. So anyone out there that wants to join and watch the game live with some Eagles fans and make it a bit of a fun evening, hit them up and find out where that's happening. I can't make it. I'm working on Sunday night.
Of course you are.
I'll be on night shift. I'll be watching from my desk incognito. So
I'll send you a picture of my cheesesteak. Don't worry.
I'm jealous. I'll be super jealous. But anyway, thanks, Liam, so much for joining us. And we'll head back to me and David. Okay, so we'd like to thank Liam for joining us on the podcast, and we'll see what happens on Sunday between the two teams that we discussed. Now for our preview, David, what do you think we have to do offensively against this Eagle defense? What are they throwing at us, and what do we have to see for a bounce back performance for Zach and the offense?
I think with the Eagles, they do tend to sit two safeties deep, so you're probably not going to see those big throws from Zach that we saw against Tennessee. That kind of offense, I think you do have to take what they give you. They're a good defense. They're not an elite defense, but they're probably better against the pass than they are against the run. So getting the run game going like we saw in Houston, the offensive line did a great job in Houston, opening up some holes for Walter and the rest of the guys. So if we can get that run game going and Zach can just identify kind of where those soft spots are in some of the zone coverage they run, I think you can move the ball on Philadelphia. I think their philosophy is very similar to our own in a bend not break type system. So if we can, don't focus on a big splashy 20+ yard plays, just move the chains, and then just convert in the red zone. We need to not turn the ball over. You can't give Jalen Hurts and this offensive running game short field, because then they'll be able to do whatever they want with you. So I do think that's key. I would quite like to see Zach just get into a rhythm early. I just want to see him get into a little bit of rhythm, complete 3-4 passes. Get it to a few different people. He wasn't focusing on Corey Davis, and that's a positive that I saw when I looked back on the coaches' film. Is that early in the season, one of our biggest complaints was that Zach was really focusing in on Corey Davis and Corey Davis alone, and you didn't see that as much against Houston.
He identified went to Keelan and went to Elijah and looked
to that. Not Dan Brown, tight end Ryan Griffin.
So he was looking for other people. So I think there was some improvements and some lessons that were being put out there despite some of the negative parts of his performance, there was some positive things that I think that's one of them in terms of spreading the ball around and getting multiple targets involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be important again this week. It's going to be important again. They do have some good cornerbacks. Obviously, Darius Slay is still playing at a good level. Steven Nelson's over there. I remember in the offseason, a lot of Jets fans wanted Steven Nelson in New York. I haven't watched a massive amount of Philadelphia games. The PFF don't seem to rate him, but then how much faith do I have in that? So it's hard to see. I read a few Eagles fans who are relatively happy with him. So there's some quality in the back end of the Eagles' defensive structure. So it's going to be interesting to see how Elijah Moore does, how Corey Davis does if he plays, and how Denzel Mims does. So they have plenty of quality on this. And one thing that I noticed about Philadelphia is I was kind of looking through their roster and I was looking at their defensive line, and I was kind of like, oh, they've got a lot of talent on that defensive line.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have a look at their sack numbers, and you're like, this doesn't really match up. I think they've had 5 games this season where they haven't recorded a single sack, which is a single season franchise record for them. Which, when you look at the talent and then you look at the production, they're getting pressure, but they're not converting it into sacks.
Yeah, I think it's due to it was especially when I went on the Eagles podcast as well. Obviously, I spoke to Liam and I went on their podcast, and we were talking about sacks that we may that they may get on us, and I went for quite a high number purely because I thought our line gives up, and I thought of the names they had, and I thought Zach will hold the ball, and then they were saying they all went lower than me in terms of the sack totals because I think they've seen that, especially what they're saying that is that Barnett and Josh Sweat are not producing to the level they would hope. Even though Hargrave and Fletcher Cox in the middle are doing a good job at creating pressure down the middle, they're just not able to finish things off because the guys on the outside aren't doing what they would hope. So it's going to be an interesting test. They have got the talent there, so it's going to be an interesting test for our offensive line to see how the tackles are going to have to be, I think, better than they were last week, generally, at least in pass pro, at least from the beginning of the game. Hopefully, I think that really matters. I think they really have to be, let's make sure we start the game right from a pass pro, because I think if Zach gets rocked, I think that is could be a contributing factor to why he then goes off on a it could be something that affects him. So I think as we see, a lot of things do affect him as at this stage of his career. So I think if you can give him the protection early and make sure that you're not goofing like we had that one with Fant, letting the guy come in across him, but when we were near the end zone and took Zach out, but on the one that Elijah slipped on. I think if you can just stay consistent and keep Zach upright at least for the first quarter and let him get into the game without being, I think it was twice, or he got 2 sacks already in the first quarter already. So I think if you try to get that protection up there, then it's up to him obviously to get the ball out. But yeah, hopefully they'll be able to hold up and kind of manage this defensive line which has got talent but underachieving.
Yeah, and I think one thing is that the Eagles don't blitz a lot. So I think they're the second lowest blitzers in football. So, they do rely on their defensive line winning their one-on-ones to get pressure. And while they're getting pressure, obviously they're not converting them into sacks. That should almost play into our wheelhouse a little bit. In the they know what they need to do. They have their personnel. They're not going to be thrown a ton of exotic blitzers that they need to pick up. So. I'm quite confident that we'll be able to cope with it, which is famous last words. But you're absolutely right. The tackles last week were the noticeable areas that were concerning. Morgan Moses got banged up, but some people say he was allowing that because he got banged up, but he allowed pressures before he took that injury. So he just wasn't having a good game, full stop, before he got the injury, and then after the injury, obviously there's a ready-made excuse there. For an underperformance, but George Fant overall has been a good tackle over the season. I'm still looking forward to Becton getting back. I think he was on the field doing some running this week, so hopefully, it's only a couple of weeks until we see him back in the fold. But it's protect Zach, take what they give you, get the run game going, and don't turn the ball over. I mean, it's kind of the same things every week, but those are the key bits that you need to do to beat this Eagles team, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that the middle part of the defense is where they can be had out of it. Is that something that you've seen yourself with the Eagles? The kind of their linebacking unit is beatable in terms of you're able to get some success there. You think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I think. Crowder may have a little bit of a bounce back game this
Mm.
week. So I think he only had one reception last week, but they are susceptible to the middle of the field. They are susceptible. If you have a smart receiver who knows where to sit down in coverage, and Crowder is very good at doing that, and so is Elijah Moore. They can be beaten as long as the quarterback recognizes where those soft spots are and where those players are going to be sitting down.
Mm.
They're not. They haven't got a winning record for a reason. They're not an incredibly proficient team. They run the ball really really well, and that's we'll get to that on defense, but that is how they're winning games of football.
Yeah.
They're rarely winning games of football by having a dominant defensive display. They're middle of the pack in terms of their overall defense, so they can be beaten. But then they'll kind of look at our rushing offense and say, well, you can't run the ball, so we'll be able to key in on your receivers, and we won't need to load the box to stop the run.
I think our running game's I think it's gone up a few notches in terms of the DVOA ranks, and I think it is improving. I think the line play has been better, and I think it's something due to a certain three-letter initials replacing another three-letter initials in right guard position. I think that's made a big difference in terms of, because with a run play, if you're creating a gap there and one guy misses this assignment, it just ruins the play, and that's what was happening with GVR so much. And I think LDT's been a big improvement in the run game and helping that. So I think that's going to be that's where we're going to have to kind of show that we're better than our rankings and really run on that. Let that running game help Zach out. Do you think that Ryan Griffin will be involved again and somehow miss a first down when he catches it in about 10 yards of space like he did last week?
Potentially.
That was
Ryan Griffin's not helping himself.
That play, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, yes, he's got it, and he's got so much space. He'll easily get to get a first down, and he's somehow managed not to get the first down on that play. I was like,
it's kind of the clock ticking, isn't it? It's kind of catch the ball, and then he has to think what he's going to do, and by the time he's done that, the space is closed, rather than kind of a natural feel to, right, let's just head upfield. This is the situation. As soon as you get the ball. Maybe it's because he needs to concentrate on catching the ball so much.
Probably,
you hear announcers say, he was trying to run before he caught the ball.
Yeah.
Maybe Griffin's just trying to avoid those situations. But
possibly.
I mean, you said it at the top of the show, the tight end room is a bit of a disaster, to be fair, for the Jets, and they do need to address that. Almost a complete overhaul in the off season.
It's quite a fun thing to say that you don't have to touch, other positions, and the tight end room you can really put good resources, because it's I think it's a good place. I think this draft is you're looking into this class. What's the class looking like for tight end?
It's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. I mean, there's no Kyle Pitts in it.
No.
So if you want your kind of mid first round pick, you're probably not going to find him in this draft. But you have got like Windermeyer and Kohler and Likely, and there's a lot of good pass catches.
Second, third round guys probably.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's good.
That's
for us.
where I'd expect us to pick one. So it's almost I don't think Joe Douglas would ever spend a top 10, top 15 pick on a tight end like Atlanta did. I just don't think that's his MO in terms of how he constructs his roster. So that's where I want to. Yeah, exactly. That's why I want to see the tight ends. I want to see them in the second, third round, and there's plenty there to choose from. So I think it's going to be a good draft for the Jets if they want to go in that direction.
That's good. We're drafting these little draft knocks throughout now. Our eyes are wandering. Our eyes are wandering at the moment. If we I think if we turn our attention to the defense now, because I think that's going to be a very crucial matchup, is how well we can contain the run. I think it's, for me, looking at this game, you've got to look at that Colts game and say, we faced a good line there, and they really controlled us and got a lot on us. I think we need to look at that and say, how do we do better than that? And I think it's going to have to be a bit of, I wonder if they're going to just change how much they kind of really go after the passer and really think, maybe put a spy on the passer and then have someone and have a lot more discipline, making sure that they just don't get beat easily on the run game, because it just could get out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't an easy run game to stop, and that's why they're the number one rushing attack in football at the minute. They do run their RPO system out of a spread formation as well, which is, gets your defense spread out, and they rely on their offensive line, which is a very good offensive line to sustain their blocks. I mean, they brought in Landon Dickerson. He's playing left guard this year. They've obviously still got Jason Kelsey. They've got two good tackles. Their right guard, Jack Driscoll, has just gone onto IR, so it's going to be interesting to see how that affects their ability to run the ball. But at the same time, they do have Nate Herbig, who came in last week. So I think Kelsey got banged up last week a little bit, and Herbig came in and played centre, and then Driscoll obviously left with the injury, and Herbig shifted over to right guard. So, it's not like he's coming in completely fresh and he hasn't played this year. He's got, I think I saw earlier today, 100 and something snaps at right guard. So, he is a decent player. But I mean, their read option's quite simple for Jalen Hurts. I mean, it does tend to, because they often run trips to one side. The other side is completely open, and if the defensive end bites down, then Hurts keeps it. If he doesn't, then Miles Sanders or Boston Scott or Jordan Harrell, whoever it is in running back, can just shove it up the middle. And they've got so many yards just going straight up the middle because Jalen Hurts is their leading rusher, and he's been so effective in this system that teams do tend to kind of, especially defensive ends and cornerbacks who are coming in, they don't come in with aggression and speed because they know that if Hurts gets to the outside, he's gone. So I think your plan, I think Quincy Williams spying Hurts is probably a good idea, because Williams is probably the only linebacker we have who has the speed to run him down in the open field.
Yeah.
But it's easy to say and a lot more difficult to actually execute. So that's going to be where the game's won and lost. I think it's easy to look past their receiving core, though, isn't it? Obviously, Riga had some issues on Sunday with drops, but I think they were his first 2 drops of the season. So they've got Devonta Smith, who's had a good rookie campaign. I think he'd be getting more attention if Jamar Chase hadn't completely exploded onto the scene in Cincy.
Yeah.
But Devonta Smith's having a fine campaign, along with the rookie wide receivers last year are doing really well, aren't they? If you think about them, kind of Jalen Waddle and Smith and Chase,
and Elijah,
and Elijah as well, doing well. So that rookie class at wide receiver could turn out to be one of the better rookie classes. And
Tony, when he's flashed as well. Kadarius Toney as well when he's
when
played.
Daniel Jones, can actually get in the football.
Yeah,
he's done a good job.
I think it's a pretty good class. Yeah.
So I think they have got talent in the receiving room, so you can't completely sell out on the run, because they've got Dallas Goedert, who obviously they signed to an extension, and he's a very good receiving tight end. I mean, I would take Devonta Smith away. I would put more resource into taking him away and make them beat you with their second, third, fourth, because as you saw with Riga, can't necessarily be trusted. And what was interesting was they didn't target Devonta Smith at all on that final fourth quarter drive, which was quite interesting when you put that resource into that player and how he's performed this season. You'd expect him to get the looks on the fourth quarter, and they just didn't look his way.
But that's probably because maybe what the Giants were doing. I've said we haven't been able to see any of the all 22 film, but maybe the Giants were really doing was kind of keying on not letting Devonta Smith and making Rager the guy that they were happy for them to beat them if it was going to be anybody. So maybe that's what we have to do and really put it on him to have a bounce back, which is not good after the kind of it's not a good narrative for a guy to kind of have such a outly bad kind of game for the fan base be completely out on him, and then the next week he goes up against us. We're like, oh, here we go. He's going to be the kind of the comeback, isn't it? But I think
if Rieger's available on your fantasy waiver wire, I'd maybe pick him up and stream him, because
I think Quez Watkins is also going to be in fact. I think when I was on their pod, they were mentioning that they feel that he's taken over, or he's up there in discussion for their wide receiver too. And he had a nice catch, another couple of nice bit of production on Sunday as well. So yeah, they got some good guys in the run in the passing game. Like I said, Goddard's a good tight end as well. So they're not one-sided. They've got good players in both parts of the game. So, but it's just been the running game is dominant. I think you've just got to say, yeah, like, we need to do a better job at containing the run, because it could just get out of hand. And then once the run game's going, then the passing game comes off the back of that, and then it's really hard. So I think if you can stop the run and, say pick your poison and choose the passing game, try to keep Devonta Smith out of it, that's your best shot at trying to keep the score down and let the offense try to put up some points against the Philly defense, and see that maybe the key to victory. Easier said than done, because they've got some good talent on both sides of the ball, but I think it's a winnable game. So it's an interesting one. I am also confident, somewhat. I think coming off last week's win, I don't think it's because of last week's win. I just feel that I'm always quite confident when we're not going up against, say, a Bills or something. I always feel like we've got a shot against most teams if we turn up, and sometimes a few plays into the game, I realize we're not going to show up on certain games, and you go, well, okay, we haven't shown up today. So, but I think if anything with the Bengals game, it taught me it's just like, yeah, we've got a lot of ability in certain positions to get the work done. So we will see what it brings on Sunday. In terms of a prediction, David, for the game, do you want to throw out? Let's do an in-game prediction. What you think? Something not so much the score, but in-game prediction for the game. So something that you might think maybe a sack total or something like that, or a touchdown total yardage.
I'm gonna go with Zach. I think Zach has. I'm gonna a multiple touchdown. I think he's gonna throw more touchdowns than interceptions. Is that a acceptable target? I think at the start of the season we'd be like, it's a pretty rubbish prediction. It's number 2. But I think at this point, if he comes out and he throws 2 touchdowns and 1 interception or no interceptions, if he had a no interception game, that would be outstanding. Do you know what I mean? It would just be a confidence builder. If he had a multiple touchdown and no interception game.
See, last week he would have it was that obviously the interception was just one of those freaking. It wasn't like one where he rifled it into double or triple coverage, and you're like, oh, it was a very weird interception in terms of how it happened. Obviously, it's still a bad play, but it wasn't your usual one. He could have easily escaped.
Remember the defender dropped one as well.
He did
on the Berrios pass.
Yeah, on the Berrios when he slung it. He did sideways. Yeah, he got away with that one. So it's you take one and you give one away. So I guess that's what it is. But I think you're right. Zach kind of playing a cleaner game generally would be great. But yeah, so you're saying either more touchdowns or interceptions or no interceptions at all?
I'm going to go no interceptions. Because I think that's almost more important than him putting touchdowns on the board from a long-term development standpoint that he doesn't turn the ball over. Or a fumble. So no turnovers.
No turnovers from Zach. Okay. I'll go with. I think Elijah's going to. I think Elijah's going to have. I'll put 100 plus and 1 for Elijah Moore.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah, I think so. I just got a kind of little feeling about that one, but I don't know. It's just the way I look at it in terms of. They've got good players, but I think that middle section could be where Elijah can pick up something and take it to the house, and that would account for quite a lot of that 100 yards. So that would be my one. In terms of the score prediction, what do you think we are going into for this game?
I always hate predicting us to win. I don't think it's going to be a massively high-scoring game. I've got a feeling I'm going to go 24-21. To either.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'll go Jets.
Right, I'll go 24-17 Eagles, because that's what I said on their podcast, and I think I can see it. And I did say at the time I think it can go either way. I think I could see a similar score, but I think it'll be around that kind of score difference. It'll be around we'll be both around the 20s, high teens, 20s, the win and losing team. So I think that's going to be it. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're right, and I hope we come out with this victory, because I think pinning 2 games in a row to win would be fantastic. Where we actually want to win, unlike last year where we won 2 in a row to take us out of the Trevor Stakes, which is old news at this point. But let's get 2 wins on the bounce where we want to actually win. And build on the end of the season and really kind of take the rest of the season by the scruff of the neck. So, yeah. David, anything you want to say to the listeners before we head off?
No, I just came into my head. I was just thinking one player actually that popped a little bit on all 22 was Elijah Riley. So the safety we picked up,
from the Eagles.
Yeah, and I think Salah was asked about it, and he said that Joe Douglas had wanted him for a while, and he tried to get him last year, and couldn't get him, but we're really happy to have him this year. And he just looked really good. He just looked really smart. He looked really. It seems like his football IQ and his flow to the ball was just really, really solid. So that's one to watch this week. I'm quite excited to see if he can follow that up because we're desperate for safety help going into next year. So if we can find one on the waiver wire, like we found a couple of other guys on the waiver wire, it just takes a little pressure off having to completely redo that room, because obviously Marcus May likely gone, maybe back, and Joyner. Obviously he's a free agent as well, so he might be gone as well. So yeah, it's just quite an interesting bit.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting just to wrap up on that is that obviously with the Jared Davis seemingly being like a big of a bust as a free agent, and Joyner the same for different reasons, obviously, with him being injured, but the fact that Joe was able to pick up Quincy, uh, you know, off the scrap heap basically, and get Elijah Riley off their practice squad. Yeah, I think it could be potentially some quite interesting moves that he's made on the back end to make up for some of those losses. And if you think about it, if you flip the way and you say we gave Quincy that contract and we gave Elijah and we brought in Elijah Riley, maybe that works out. We'll see it's been 2 games. These things can fizzle out sometimes after an interesting start. So hopefully he continues, but he does look very interesting. Yeah, so look out for him on the back end and see how he holds up against his former team, he only was with them only a few weeks ago. So yeah, guys. So yeah, on always follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Jets UK Pod. Follow us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have the live video. We have the video of the whole podcast up there as well. So yeah, any likes, follows, subscription on that would be fantastic. David, you've got your Jets Way kind of newsletter. So subscribe to that. It's absolutely fantastic work that David puts into that, and he'll be obviously got the Eagle preview and written in his own written preview for the game as well as great work that he's put in this week. So yeah, check that out as well. But guys, yeah, so enjoy the game. Hopefully we pick up that second win. Hopefully we defeat the Eagles finally. Hopefully the stealth black uniform winning streak continues. We will see, but that is where we are, and we'll probably know, like I said, a few plays into the game, we'll know which way it's going. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we have a good game and Zach bounces back and has a game that we can be a bit more positive about and have something to kind of be happy about when we're recording next week. But enjoy the weekend, enjoy the game, and we'll catch you next time.